Hello, 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 and hello. Many peoples on the internet. Hello, I'm Jonas. Welcome to another one of these Into Games Discipline Deep Dives. Thanks for joining us. Please do just pop in chat that you can hear me, or more importantly, if you can't hear me, that's the thing that I'd really like to know. And if there's any issues with the streams and setup, yeah, please do just holler in the chat where you can. Hi, I'm Jonas. I'm the community and events lead with Into Games, and what do you know? We're doing an event. It's kind of what we do around here. This is one of our discipline deep dives. These are sort of events that we do quite regularly, but mostly weekly on Wednesdays, where we pick a discipline in the games industry and we look at what requirements there are for entry level roles in that particular discipline, and we sort of then figure out, well, that could be what if we could find a talk, what if we could actually teach that knowledge, that skill, or that subject to an audience in sort of a nice 1 hour sort of touchstone, so that, you know, even if you don't necessarily know everything after the 1 hour, you at least know the vocabulary, you at least know the kind of like the things you should be Googling and the things you should be going on to learn later on, so that basically you can be sort of more employable and get them jobs. So thanks for joining us for today. Today's discipline deep dive is focusing on the discipline of animation. More specifically, we're going to be looking at animation tools, so sort of software and tools in animation, and specifically industry standard tools in the games industry. So what are they? How do you use them? How do you get good at them? How do you make them work for you? And then hopefully by knowing that, you'll be able to go on and get some incredible work in the games industry. All of these subjects, by the way, are really supported and reinforced by something that Into Games and Bird's Eye View built at the beginning of this year, called the Entry Level Skills Hub. I'll put a little link down there for you. The Entry Level Skills Hub. You go to entrylevel.games, and this is it's kind of like a hub or repository of different entry level jobs commonly found in the games industry. And then for each of those jobs, there's like a really clear list of what the knowledge, what the skills, what the competencies and expectations are for someone going into that role. So that if you're looking for a role in the games industry, specifically your first role or sort of an entry-level junior role in the games industry, you can sort of really look at this hub and start to understand what are those roles likely to be asking of you, expecting of you, And then events like this can hopefully tick some of those boxes. So that's sort of enough from me and enough background. What we're going to do today is, we're going to talk about animation, but it's not going to be me that talks about animation every single week. I say this, I know nothing about the subjects that we talk about, but do you know who does? Our wonderful speakers and our wonderful volunteers. Today, I have Mara joining me. Mara appears on stage right now. Hello, Mara. How are you doing?
Hello. I'm good. Thank you for having me, and thank you for giving me this opportunity to volunteer. So yeah,
No,
happy to be here.
no, super. We're always blown away by people's generosity, the fact that they're willing to take the time, and it's often because people understand that it's not that easy to get into the games industry, and they understand, like, oh yeah, there probably isn't a good resource for this stuff. There isn't a good guide, or things like that. And it's just lovely to have people kind of talk through their own personal experiences, because often your experience will be more relevant than like a guide that was written 5 years ago and is like purchasable for £5,000. Like there's all these silly priced out resources out there that just I don't think really are as good as just hearing the real thing from a real person.
Yeah.
So with that said, now Mara, before we start, do you want to just make sure that your slide is back to slide number 1, because I can see a cheeky little preview of what's to come. Audiences, please be sort of super kind, super generous. Say hello, make yourselves known, and have a great time when you with Mara when we do this talk. We'll just get the text set up. I can see some familiar names in chat, by the way. Hey Luigi, how's it going? I have to reply to a message from you. I know I do, and I apologize about that, but I acknowledge that you and I have a conversation to have. And then I'll tell you what it is, Mara. StreamYard has lost your sharing. I think you need to reshare it. That's all it is. Because I've got those. Yeah, that's perfect. Okay, good. Right. That about does it for the introduction, everyone. So I'm going to leave you in the extremely capable hands of Mara here to sort of talk through animation and tools and things. Everyone be very lovely, and we'll chat a little bit later. And if you've got any questions in chat, by the way, just put them in chat and we'll come back and answer them once the talk is done. I'll be here to sort of moderate that. I'll be in chat the whole time, so if anyone's got any questions about anything else surrounding the event, I'll just answer them quietly in the chat window. Right, enough dilly-dallying. Here are some slides. Mara, you go there, and I disappear. Right, have fun.
Hi. So I was lucky to get an opportunity to volunteer for this. And I would try to kind of like walk you through which is what it says here on understanding and mastering the tools in 3D animation, specifically for games. The mastering part is like more so up to practice, as you can imagine, but I can try and like kind of like pinpoint out more like what the programs we tend to use, and just kind of like generally jump over some and touch upon some stuff that you, as was mentioned, we might want to look up later, or maybe I'm gonna share some tips and tricks that I use on daily basis. And just really quickly about me, just so you know who I am. Starting off, I've always been passionate about animation and art from the beginning. And I think that's kind of like in general for most of the animators, depending, of course, the background where you come from. But I kind of came from just being passionate about art in general, specifically drawing. I started from the very, very basics and kind of like worked myself up to 3D game animation. That specific passion I discovered during my animation university college years, which leads me to the next point. I studied in animation workshop in Denmark for technically it was like a bachelor in animation, but you know how it is. The studies in animation never really ends. And you can always like find some courses online afterwards, or if there's something more you want to kind of like deep dive into. For me, it was games and studying and researching more about game animation right after I got my first internship in games industry, and just wanting to know more what's the difference from 3D animation in general, and what's 3D animation for games. Yeah, so lots of self-learning. I can only advise that. As I said before, the learning of animation never stops. And yeah, so also creating a strong 3D game animation reel, or just 3D animation reel in general, and getting your first internship, which in my case was in Studio Gobo in Brighton in UK. Um, yeah, and then where I'm now, I've so far I worked on AAA games, and one of them, the most prominent one, was Hogwarts Legacy, and then Lego Horizon Adventures that are kind of soon come out, I think. All just animation on those, and I kind of dipped my fingers into like Fable over at Playground Studios. Yeah. And right now I'm working on a project I can't really talk about in a new studio, Act Three. So yeah, that's really quickly about me. Yeah, but let's talk about 3D animation softwares. I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with these, but I'm gonna kind of approach this from the kind of perspective where I want to start out. I know something about 3D animation, but what's the difference between just 3D animation and 3D animation in games? And I'm kind of new to this. I would have loved if someone had told some of these things to me before I started. So I'm gonna tell these things to you guys. So yeah, you can definitely recognize that mostly, I think the industry standard still is and holds up Autodesk Maya, Motion Builder, Unreal Engine, or maybe Unity if it's like usually smaller indie companies for the game engine, and 3D Max and Perforce and Blender is also slowly making, I think, in its way in games industry, because unlike most of these programs, it's free and it's actually very powerful too. Um, yeah, so I'm just gonna straight up jump into uh, the most used programs in my own daily life, working on a AAA game. So yeah, Autodesk Maya, as I mentioned before, it's ongoing game animation industry standard. And I think it will be for a while. There are some things that are changing. There's some, especially if you are considering to work in with Unreal Engine. There's totally, you can see the latest updates. Sometimes they stream them on YouTube, I think, where they suggest new tools for possibility to animate in Engine itself. But so far, personally, I don't think it's gonna happen anytime soon, because of purely because of the more animation friendly interface, I think, which Maya has, and I think Blender does too. Yeah, Autodesk Maya is technically expensive, especially if you are considering to just buy it for yourself. Um, I still think it's worth it if you do want to check it out. If you're not working, if you do work in a studio and they use these programs, like studio probably has like a subscription for them, so you're kind of covered for that. You don't have to worry about it. Of course, there's alternatives, like I mentioned, Blender. And I think it's a really good alternative. Kind of trying to learn it myself is really powerful. Arguably, there's even more tools than Maya can provide, and sometimes it's just, oftentimes you can run into like, oh, you want to open this mesh or this really heavy rig, and Maya actually can't do it, but Blender can. And that, it makes you consider um, yeah, maybe switching, maybe just learning it on the side. I believe some studios actually already use Blender just full time. Um, yeah, the thing is, if you learn one of them, you kind of learn most of them, especially if you compare Maya and Blender. I think they're quite similar. There are, if you're used to working in Maya, which has been, again, I think most people have been working in Maya so far. That you can, I think, get at first kind of confused with Blender, but overall, I think you can get the grips of it quite quickly. It is They're still the same tools. The naming might be different. The interface can be different. Yeah, so what does Autodesk Maya provide? Obviously, you can animate. It's a powerful tool for animation. You can work with layers. Um, and I think there's different, of course, every animator has their own workflow. You don't have to necessarily like work with layers. You can, like some people are very destructive. I believe I'm quite destructive when I work. Sometimes I have all my keys and I just maybe bake it down, maybe create a layer, and then just like if I have to edit or like kind of work on top of something, I just kind of like delete all the in betweens and just work the keys while preserving the animation before. You can always go back. It's just very flexible. Some people purely work with the weights in the layers. Yeah, and again, it's also like a workflow that is beneficial if you work with motion capture too. Um, yeah, it's great for preparing, exporting assets for game engines. Of course, it's basically designed for it. And your studio, if you work for like a bigger studio, again, they usually have again some tools that they use for their specific game. That again you might have to like learn, and they might be really bespoke, and you might not find them anywhere online. But usually, if it's a good studio, they will teach you those as well, and there might be separate tools for how you export the FBX files and so on. And then also how you integrate them in Engine and how you can test your animations. Maya is also great because it's connected to ShortGrid or Flow, or they keep renaming it, but it's basically a production tool that helps you like quickly make playblasts, quickly upload them online, but mostly for review for your teammates, leads. They can give you feedback, and you can also like obviously track everything. It's good. It's especially I think great for cinematics if you are working on those. And also you can see literally it's great because it's really quick directly from Maya, and you can see what else what your other teammates are working on, and kind of like keep overview of the whole project. Even though if you're not in the lead position, you can still get updates. Yeah, and if you're obviously when you learn one thing, next one will be easier, like going from Maya to Blender. Yeah. Uh, Another tool, yeah, I've been learning and learned and will always keep learning about is Motion Builder, or some people call it just Mobu. It's you can tell immediately. I tried to include some visualization gifs there. That interface is very similar to Maya, but it's arguably even more powerful for animation. You can directly upload and plop like motion capture you captured beforehand on like basically any of your rigs, and edit it there before taking it into Maya. Um, and yeah, I think it's again motion capture in general is used I think more and more often these days. Even if the project is keyframe based, usually it's kind of like one or the other. Usually you can quickly block out something for like attack animations in keyframe just to get it in the game, just to see what you need. Um, and yeah, and then eventually kind of replace it with motion capture if that's what the game design wants, or actually the other way around. You can just have someone quickly motion capture something if you have that setup opportunity, and later on kind of like replace it with something more snappier, like what usually keyframe can provide. Yeah, of course are similarities between Maya, and there's this thing called takes system, which is, I like to think about it, if you ever worked in Adobe Premiere or After Effects, it's quite a bit similar to that, in the sense that you can store your animations in like these kind of like block out takes, and again work on top of it. It's of course a bit more complex than that, but you can easily chop your animations, motion captures in this case. You can fix the kind of like biggest issues that usually motion capture can come with. You can clean up the root motion, or you can easily already adjust some poses, or make sure that poses at the beginning and end match, which is really important for game animation if it needs to loop. So you can all like already like clean up all of that in Motion Builder before you go in Maya, and then work further on like maybe exaggerating the animation, or cleaning up the foot sliding, um, which you can also actually do in Motion Builder already. Um, so yeah, it's another software that's great for previs and testing out. Of course, this one is really more about if you can also afford motion capture. Maybe you have outsourcing. Maybe you can grab some stuff online. I think there's like plenty of resources online for that. If you just want to do work for yourself, some things for your own portfolio, for your own show reel, or just like learn the software, I'm sure you can. There's plenty of mocap you can use from online. But usually, yeah, you would need a studio or like a motion capture suit, and actually, the most importantly, also a team or a person that knows how to calibrate it, how to work with it, because it's quite a bit to learn before even getting the data in Mobu. So yeah, just really quickly touching on motion capture. I'm not going to read through all of those, but you can see that there's mostly three methods on how to capture them. I mean, the best results will always be, I think it's what's um, listed there, as a third option, because it like records everything. But again, that I have to mention that one requires a lot of gear, a lot of space as well. Usually, you get like a full stage with multiple cameras to capture every target on your actor. Um, yeah, and to just quickly see, just so you can quickly see how motion capture usually happens, is you get your actor, or maybe it's yourself as an animator, which is also fun, all suited up, all geared up, calibrated into the system, and then usually you have a director or animation lead that tells you, or you usually should prepare before coming there, because it's takes a lot of time to do all of this. Kind of that directs you into what's to come, what we need. You probably know what animation clips you need beforehand, and uh, while you're doing that, the stage crew cleans up the motions, fixes any lost markers, smooths out any like jerky motions, and then you're kind of like ready to record. After that, the cleaning up team is delivering the take to the studio, and from there on, usually you need some tech animators to retarget these animations to game character. There's a bunch of quality checks, of course, but afterwards, it's a time for animator to kind of get to work. It's quite a quite a workflow, so you can see why it might be time consuming and why it's expensive. Um, but again, I think it's interesting, fun, and worth looking into if that's something you want to try out. Yeah, of course, there's Blender, um, uh, which is, I think, again, slowly breaking into industry as well as 3Ds. Um, yeah, it's free, unlike Maya. It's really powerful. You recently I also discovered that you can edit videos and like literally stitch your clips together. Create like game assets in it as well. Which immediately also kind of um, makes me realize that it takes you like even away from using, let's say, the Adobe packages, because you can now do it in Blender as well. I think for learning this, it's usually I personally just go for online tutorials. The very already famous one is the Blender Guru with the donut. I think most of the whether you are into modeling or you just want to learn um, generally what Blender is, I think it's still a good starting point. Um, and yeah, it doesn't. You don't have to necessarily be 3D generalist. If even if you still want to do animation, I think it's worth knowing and getting familiar with the interface in general. Yeah, and some just quick tips in general for what I use when I animate in technically in any of these softwares or specifically in Maya. Well, first, I think it's important that you kind of really familiarize with yourself with the layout of the software, and create custom shortcuts, for example, for playback or stepping between the keys. You don't have to always stick with the default animation layout. Oftentimes, I mean, it's not bad to, but the more you kind of like design it to be as comfortable for yourself, the quicker you'll become. Like any like might you might think any silly shortcuts, anything, just add them. You can create shelves, buttons. You can design. You can write Maya Mel scripts, I think, just to quickly like just the more accessible all the tools that already are in Maya for you, the quicker you're gonna be, the quicker you're gonna make mistakes, and the quicker you're gonna learn. Yeah. Secondly, also make sure that you have playblast and render settings set up to the best of the quality possible. That means like no controls showing, no random selections or viewport names. Sometimes there's like the camera name that's always on top of the screen. It's a really easy way to hide it. You just have to go in one of the, I think it's in Maya under the view, and hiding the pop-up on the display, and you can just hide everything but the polygons. It's kind of like it's not only looks better professional, but once you do it once, you don't have to worry about it ever again. And you can be sure that all your play blasts, everything you show to your leads are they look good. Yeah, another tip, as basically kind of feeds into the last one, is also creating a specific environment or set in your scene that you are going to work with. That means like just have like a ground plane, some props, and good lighting ready as a set you can always reference or import in your scene. That way you can, again, you have to only create it once, and you can play around with it once you start animating whatever you need to animate. But you don't have to worry about like creating a new set every time. Just keep it close, and it's very quick and easy, and speeds up your workflow. Uh, yeah. So relying, I know there's a lot of animation tools, but also learning how they are created, if especially if they're just scripts or something, just opening them up and creating your own or like adjusting existing tools is very useful. There are already like some tools. I think they're literally called Maya bonus tools that you can download from the Autodesk website. Really helpful for animators. There's, I think there's oftentimes, I don't know, maybe we get lazy, or we just don't have time, or you just end up kind of like jumping over these things. But a lot of times there's already kind of cool retiming tools, or how to work with your tangents in the graph editor tools in Maya already. I think it's just about putting a little bit of time aside to just, okay, I really need to fix this issue. Probably someone already has had this issue before, or something very similar, and just researching more about it. And yeah, again, it's going to help you a lot with speeding up your workflow, and you might resolve someone else's issue as well. Um, yeah, one another specifically to point out a tool which is very fun and useful, is the motion path. Um, it's I think it's just a script I got from one of the I think it's called Gumroad or something like that. You can there's a bunch of websites actually for these things. It's just about searching for them, and I think this one was just the motion track tool, where you can quickly draw the path you want to create for your character, parented on that motion trail, and you instantly have something that could work for a previous or something, and you can see it in motion, and maybe even like block out your whole shot really quickly. Yes. Yes, this is just more of the same. I needed to mention also, there's like, since I keep talking and getting to the point, there's a lot of stuff online you can get for free, especially as you're starting out. I think a lot of the times, a lot of the rigs or sets or tools are, you gotta buy them, which is not too bad because you are supporting someone who is helping the animation industry. They're developing tools, which is good. But sometimes I remember as a student, it might feel daunting to pay like even if it's like 20 I think dollars or something for a tool that you don't know. I mean, you're not sure if you're going to use too much, or if you're going to even learn how to use it. I assure you, there's plenty of stuff online that's for free. And even if you are wanting to explore some softwares that require like subscription, I think one of the best tools is Animbot. I think, as far as I know, like every animator has always used Animbot. It comes with so many useful tools, to the point where I feel like I don't think I could animate without Animbot. It's just so quick and easy. Um, there's recently also a tool called Cascadeur coming out. People are working with it, or some simulation softwares, which basically make speeds up your animation process a lot. And yeah, there's also just some 3D artists in general that just make tools, and sometimes maybe your coworkers make tools. Maybe you can collaborate with some of your friends and course mates. Yeah. So yeah, there's again, I think I mentioned Maya bonus tools, and you can experiment even like tools that are not meant for animation, like Encloth or like simulation tools. They can still be used for animation, to like ease up your workload. Like if you need to animate something that's like which we you know is going to take a lot of time, just to keyframe it one by one, but there's usually a tool for it. You can quickly block out some like follow through animations, overlaps with just simulation. Um, yeah, just a general workflow tip. Less is more. When I work with, whether it's a mocap or just purely a keyframe animation, I like to keep it simple. I think in my next slide, I also have like a visual example of that as well. Yeah, so just keeping it simple, you would be surprised how much, and I was surprised when I was learning, um, how much you can achieve, especially in games, with just three or four poses. It's You can always go in and iterate, but I think the most important thing is to get it in engine as quick as possible, just so you see, does the length fit? Are we sure of the root motion for your player character? Just to see what you need before going in and like animating it one by one key, because you can always do that later stages. But I think the quicker you get it, the quicker you see it and have a feel for it in engine, the better it is. And of course, there's many courses and books online, and shops you can buy and download for free actually, on like animation in general, or specifically um, in game animation. Yeah, these are just a couple I found useful. Even if you think, oh, this is just a book on how to animate in 2D on paper, the animation principles are still the same. It's just the medium that differs. A really good one is the timing for animation. It's a really good one, and of course the classic animator survival kit. I still think that, especially once you're starting out, it's very very useful. And sometimes it's just a great reminder. And there's also more specific game animation books and courses. I'm actually like, despite the fact that I am in this industry and I have an awesome job in games industry, I still want to learn, and currently taking like animal animation course online with like a mentor, just because I still want to enhance like places I feel that I could be better at and that interest me on top of my kind of work schedule. Um, and again, maybe your workplace is nice enough, and they could even help you with like payment for those. So it doesn't have to be like something so daunting. There's also like a lot of stuff, even online. Like I there's like this. Yeah, I even found like this like account that's called like animation analysis, and they sometimes just break down whether it's a movie or a game. They just really quickly, neatly break down some of the best like shots in animation, how the animator has been thinking about like the curves and loops and everything. So yeah, of course, Animation Mentor and I Animate and YouTube. Um, you can always also ask online. I think it's kind of like my next slide. A lot of the things that you usually are gonna encounter as you learn 3D animation have probably solved before, or someone has had something really similar. Just don't be afraid. Just Google it. I usually do it even before like asking my coworkers, because I'm people are busy, and sometimes it's just quicker. Okay, I'm gonna try and research first before like bothering my peers or something. Um, and usually it has some kind of answer, or at least you can proceed with something. But yeah, Google these days. I think you can Google anything, and just don't be afraid of it. It's probably there. Um, yeah, just to touch upon personal work and projects and practice, for games specifically, but even if it's not for games, I think you could still apply these rules. Keep them like short and useful and fun. Think about like how your animation could actually be used in a game. How you could break it down. What is if you have this awesome shot in mind of like someone attacking a character or an enemy, and you want to do all this fancy camera work, but then maybe if you do want to aim for like a game animation job, think about, well, will there really be this camera work there? Is the person that's gonna review my work gonna understand it? If the camera is floating around the character, or should I just go for something simple and let the animation, my animation work, shine instead, without any extra noise? Again, keep it simple. Every I think, especially when it comes with attack animations, it's very just useful. Just keep it simple. Start with like block out really quickly the start, the idle pose or the combat idle pose. Um, Immediately block out the anticipation, the basically, and the next one would be the attack hitting point and back to idle. So really you need 3 or 4 poses again to get the point across, and then everything else is just is gonna add to it. But to show that you understand the idea of how this animation is broken down, how it's gonna work in game engine, it's a good idea to just kind of keep it simple. Um, yeah, um, and yeah, of course, there's a difference between the cinematic and just a normal gameplay animator. Um, I myself, I'm more of a gameplay animator, so it is more of like the avatar work, the kind of um, the main character kind of work, 3Cs, which is a lot of like, let's say, attack or traversal locomotion animations. Cinematics is, I wouldn't say more difficult or easier. I don't think you can compare those things like that. It's just a completely different workflow. But they can like kind of like these two animators can still help each other out. A lot of the times, especially when you're just starting out with blocking out cinematics, a lot of the times we can reuse the assets from gameplay. Why would you reinvent the wheel if someone has already animated your walk cycle? Just grab it from a gameplay animation folder and plop it in and work on top. Quick, easy, and efficient. um, yeah, leads me, of course, into also game engines. Um, yeah, so Unreal Engine is the one I work on and have been working on. I think I started out in university. I started with Unity because it was like it's kind of like a more simplified in its own way version of Unreal Engine and great starting point. Not that I'm a complete master in it or anything at all, but I do feel like you should delve into it a little bit, even past what you think animator might know. What I started out with, again, just basics, searching for tutorials online and following them through, even though sometimes I would get confused of what I'm doing. It is gonna click later, especially once you get like a job experience and you can start asking these questions directly to your coworkers. Usually, people are really helpful with that, especially if you're just starting out. You have no reason to be ashamed of your questions or curiosity. I asked all the silly questions all the time, and I still do. No shame. That's how I learn. I just fail quickly. But yeah, I started out with just really simply trying to create like the very basic locomotion of like I want to make my character run around in like game level, like a really simple game level, and how can I achieve it? How can I make sure that I can control it? And yeah, just kind of like starting from there. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. And I think if you can do that, you're kind of like on top already. Because a lot of animators, I think, are sometimes still resistant of learning anything more technical. So if you're up for it, it's always a plus. Um, yeah. Um, Again, you just like with any software, you have to. I would recommend to familiarize yourself with the engine. Make sure you know how to import your assets, what's needed, what's the skeleton tree, what are the notifies, montages, sequences in Unreal Engine. Make sure that the more you know, the more you're gonna ease kind of like the workload on the on people that kind of work after you work with your assets. And if there's any bugs or issues, you can fix them quite quickly, and you don't have to rely on someone else or like a tech animator in your team fix those issues or even spot them. Yeah, just following also like Epic Games are also always doing some awesome updates on how they're using Unreal Engine, and recently, for example, the game animation sample project, and just playing around, seeing kind of like opening the project itself and seeing what it entails, what those animations look like, what did the animator specifically do in those. I think it's very, very beneficial. Um, yeah, and this kind of leads me to I feel like I've touched upon everything a little bit, but this kind of leads me to the overall collaboration with other departments in your studio. Communication, always keep it good, keep it professional, be responsive. And as I mentioned before, the more you know, the more closely you're going to work with other departments, the more you're going to learn, and the more you're going to be beneficial to the team, and also like eventually just feel better about yourself to be able to contribute with these things and be quick on your feet, so to say, and to be able to fix all the bugs, especially if they're animation related, to spot them in engine. Feedback and iteration is very, very big ones. In animation in general, whether it's for games or the effects or film industry or anything else. It's good to be able to receive and give constructive feedback and not never take it personally. It's just about your work. And after all, I think everybody just wants to create a better game, and everybody has an intention to create a better game. So it's all just to like fuel it and to make it better. It's never about like, oh, you are a bad person, I guess, unless you are. um, yeah, yeah, and of course, incorporating that feedback into your animations as well. And testing. It's really important to test the animation in game engine as soon as possible, as often as possible, because even if it does look good in your kind of like Maya scene or something, it's not given that it's gonna look great in your engine. The first time I started out, I actually noticed that every time I would put my animation in the game engine, I felt like it was losing a little bit of weight, and it felt floatier, lighter, and it's kind of like didn't have the same impact. That was kind of like startled, but yeah, of course, you learn from it and you realize, okay, I need to just make it a little bit more heavier in the scene, and then when I export it, it's gonna be just right in engine. But yeah, it's just small things like that you notice only when you play it, because that's when you ship the game. That's where it's gonna be. Nobody's gonna open your Maya scene or anything. It's yeah, it's gonna just be in the game. Yes, that's me. Really quickly, kind of like brushing over a little bit of everything. Thank you for listening. And yeah, if you have any questions, I'm all ears.
Beautiful stuff. Well done, Mara. That was incredible. That was really great. Thank you for going through all that. Very comprehensive. Lovely to see some very fun little silly gifts in there. Despite me being so outside of the world of 3D animation, I recognize some of those books because they are recommended as well by other people in the industry, and so it's nice to see there's a lot of consistency there. Like, you know, if the same people are saying this book is amazing, it's got to be pretty good then. Yeah, and there's been a lot of chatter as well while you've been talking. Largely just some lovely comments on things that you brought on screen, or a lot of people just kind of really relating to your experience throughout the entire conversation. Reynard, we're actually switching over to Blender from 3DS. You know, it's peak software. Nothing has changed in the last decade. And then I think we start to get into things that are slightly closer to the kind of questions or things that people would like to kind of have a bit of a conversation about. So what I'm going to do is I'll moderate from here, guys. But if you haven't asked a question, if you've got a question you want to ask, please do put it in chat now. As soon as you hear me say the word now, just so that there's enough time for us to get to your question before we wrap up. There's a really big delay I've noticed as well between what I say and what appears in chat. So yeah, get your questions in now, because otherwise lag may ruin everything. One of the sort of top questions I'm noticing. So I think it's Maria Stefan starts off with actually kind of two questions here. And I'm just giving them a quick read. So done. Yeah, okay. I'll touch on this question, and then obviously if you feel like you know the answer, go for it. And if you don't, I think we can just say don't know the answer. But that means Jonas needs to make another event that does answer that question.
Yes.
So thanks for your patience, everyone. So Maria, Stephanie, you've asked a few questions, but I've got your first one here. So this is a request, Mara, to touch upon the following. So Maria says, as a technical artist, I'm interested in how I can better understand the work of character artists and animators. So is there a strong distinction that you can clearly identify between technical artists and the work that you do? Or what makes your work quite unique that a technical artist might sort of not appreciate?
I think I guess the immediate answer that's kind of like springs to my mind to that is a lot of the times I also notice it. No matter how big the studio, it's kind of like keeping updated, keeping every team member, even if they're not directly connected to your pipeline, keeping it updated and keeping asking questions. And if there are iterations, kind of like keeping everybody in loop. The more you know about, like, let's say what the VFX artists are doing, or as an animator, the better, of course, you're gonna start understanding it, and sometimes even like call them out before something that you don't want to happen happens for on top of your animation. I think it's mostly about communication and keeping the updates fresh. If you have like if you have chats, I think we use Slack or Teams or something like that, keeping like specific channels where you can get those updates in, that helps majorly. There is definitely a difference between an animator and just as you mentioned, and a technical artist. One is arguably like more visually creative, and you are creative in a completely different way. But yeah, it kind of boils down to like collaboration, in my opinion. Yeah, that's like a short answer to it.
Nice. Maria, I hope that helps. There's sort of a follow-up question, so maybe it links, but Maria then just sort of goes on to ask, when you've worked with technical artists, what are your expectations from them? And goes on to say, if not technical artists, maybe there are engineers who create your tools for you, and they're creating the sort of the software that you have to use in-house. What's that like? Maybe asking them to do something for you, asking them to make your life easier. Do they ever make your life harder? Like, what's that relationship like, or what has it been like for you?
Well, I'm super lucky with my team because my technical artists and specifically engineers, we kind of like they're very interested, and we kind of like usually you split out depending on the studio, but usually you split out in more smaller teams where you need a technical artist, an engineer, or an animator to get some kind of like prototype of something, like let's say character movement out in game. You don't need all the animators and all the tech people for one feature, and that's where you kind of like, once you're in the smaller team, you collaborate quite intensely, and that's where the questions are going to come up. So far I've been always kind of lucky with it, where technical artists and engineers are very, very interested and very responsive to animation feedback, because oftentimes you have to, well, more often than not, animation kind of like in a way suffers in game because it has to be, if you want to like make it more responsive, you end up maybe sacrificing some frames, but you have to be able to communicate that and how to um, keep the animation still shine while the engineers can work, while the engineers can implement the responsiveness that the game really needs. Um, so far, personally, I can say that it's been a really good back and forth, as long as the people are willing to learn, and curious about each other's profession. You kind of end up being, because you can't, like, it's a game, making a game is one big chunky collaboration process. So
Nice. Well, I'm glad to hear. And yes, it's nice to hear that you're having that positive experience, and hopefully that can tell someone like, oh, that's what I should be doing to have positive experiences.
ask questions.
Next question I've got is Reynard Drost in chat asks. Now I have no context for this, so I'm going to trust that you know exactly what Reynard means. Reynard would love to hear what you think about recent AI markerless capture developments.
Oh,
I don't know what that means, but you might.
I think he means more like there's now ways of, like, you can literally record motion capture just with your phone camera, let's say, or directly take the motion out of pre-existing video. I think they're great. I wouldn't go against them. I know there was a little bit, especially if it's like just what you call it, specifically for concept artists. There was like a bit of a backlash, pushback against AI of any sorts, because I mean, yeah, it literally takes away the human aspect of that work, and reuses, like, other artists' work without their consent and stuff. But for animation, I think it's a great way to explore, and it's very quick and easy to get what you need in game. And I think it's just another cool tool. Personally, haven't tried it out myself. We're mostly sticking with like more popular, or more how would you say it, like typical ways of motion capturing so far, which is like just jumping on a set with markers. But if I had the chance, and we might maybe, I would definitely give it a go. Again, I think it eases out and quickens your workflow a lot.
Nice. Thanks for answering that. I've got, just scrolling down the chat here, a great question from Luigi Salas. Luigi, good to see you. Asks basically tips for dealing with burnout when doing passion projects. So I don't know if it was mentioned much in the talk, but do you have this experience of trying to build something that you're passionate about on top of already having this full-time work? Do you find that ever gets a bit much? Do you find that you've had to develop techniques to manage, that kind of dual life that you're living, or just or just any form of burnout, really, because the games industry is famous for doing that.
Yeah. Well, for me, what helps is I think I mentioned it before as well. Keep it simple, keep it short. So it's not like a big project, or maybe if your project is big, if your passion project is big, find the ways to kind of like break it down in more quicker goals, so you can see and get the satisfaction of getting something creative out quicker. Like, just an easy example, don't commit to, like, oh, I want to make this full action scene cinematic that's like going to be 3 minutes long. I mean, you can make that if that's what short form is for you. But especially me coming from games animation, where every animation clip is like maybe 1 second long, you're never going to even do those big um, animation shots anyways. So I just keep it simple, like 30 frames. 30 frames is more than enough to practice for me personally and get something out of it. Yeah, simple, sweet, and quick.
Nice. I think yeah. Reynard said it in chat earlier, but like, your advice to just fail quickly. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, if you're gonna sort of do things and you're unconfident or it's new and you want to get good at it, then just be confident about failing and just move on to the next thing really quickly, really quickly, really quickly. And I think the same has to be true for, if you have passion projects, make them things that
Yeah.
aren't going to last you 2 years and take a full-time job. But hopefully advice like that is helpful, Luigi, and hopefully everyone else, we've managed to somehow touch on something that you were interested in, answer the question, and open a door of knowledge and wisdom to you all. And if we haven't done that, well, don't worry, because this isn't the end. It might be the end of this event. We are hitting 2 o'clock. We've been here for an hour. So I think we are absolutely going to wrap it up here. But this isn't the end of learning and opportunity and journeys and things like that. No. Intergames is persistent. Intergames exists outside the context of this live stream. If you haven't already done so, or you weren't aware of it, Intergames has a community Discord. There's a little link in the scrolly bit down there for you. If you jump into the Intergames Discord community of over 9,000 individuals in there, over 1,000 of whom are industry professionals, people working in the industry with real experience, willing to share their experiences and answer your questions. It's a very lively community where people are constantly giving each other like just careers advice and learning advice, and kind of spurring each other on just to succeed. It's very lovely. And if you've got questions about animation, then there will be a thriving animation, specifically a gameplay animation community in there. Just on Monday, we just had Ross Everton, who's a gameplay animator at Rebellion, and Ross just did some portfolio reviews with us on Monday for animators. And there are going to be many more events just like that. You know, we will come back and do more animation events in the future. Mara, maybe we'll see you again. And, you know, if you join that community, there's definitely an opportunity for you to get the feedback that you need and the questions that you have answered. So please don't hesitate to do it. It's entirely free. I don't know if you've ever used Discord before, but it's entirely free to join these communities. It is big, it is bustling, it is busy, but there's no rush. You know, take it at your own speed. Get used to what the community is all about. I'm the community manager, so I'll answer any questions, and I'll hopefully try and make it a nice, easy experience if you're new to that sort of thing. I think that more or less wraps it up. Just in case, what we're doing, what's our next event? I think I'm doing an event next week that's about it's about programming. It's about computer science principles in coding in games, programming in games. Way over my head, but don't worry. Once again, I will be joined by a wonderful professional who will be able to sort of talk about that subject on my behalf, because I don't know anything. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Mara, is there anything that you would like to say? You can maybe shout out a project or a website or a link. Maybe you can give people one last nugget of wisdom. The floor is yours. You can say absolutely anything you want.
Oh God. No, I maybe just thank you for listening. I tend to sometimes ramble a lot when it comes to animation, but I think I hope someone got something out of it. And to be fair, I mean, if there's any more questions, you can find me on LinkedIn. Just search for my name. I'll be there, and I'm quite responsive. So yeah, just keep in touch if you have any questions.
Nice. I think that'll about do it. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. You've been a wonderful audience. Thank you for your questions. Thanks for chatting. If you found this video useful, this live stream useful, it will persist after we go offline, so you can come back and watch this. Feel free to share the link with anyone who might find this useful, or add it to your playlists and whatnot. And I think that's about it. If you've been watching offline, thanks for watching us far in the future. I hope you've still got animation in whatever year you're in, you know, and I hope that games are still good. That's about all from us. I will end the stream there. Goodbye for now. Bye everyone. Bye everyone. Just big